everything in aviation, there's a transferable skill. So whether you're flying for the airlines or flying the G200 or for a corporate department, everything's transferable into business. And so I highly encourage people who are trying to find something inside themselves, like you have to just go and do it. I see a lot of people overthinking it, right? Oh, should I go do this? Should I go do this? Part 161, part 141. Don't worry about all that stuff.
Right,
just go and get it.
Hello, aviators. Welcome back to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you the tips, tricks, hacks, and shortcuts to get you into the cockpit faster and cheaper. I'm your co-host, Sean Ritchie.
Yeah, and I'm Mike Martin, and we've got a very, very special guest today, somebody that I'm really excited to talk with, I've personally been following in my combined career with aviation and real estate for many, many years, and we were lucky enough through a mutual connection through our coaching to get him on the show. But I'd like to introduce Ryan Tseko to the podcast. How you doing, Ryan?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, yeah. No, we love it. We love it.
This is a real treat. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. So Ryan, if you've done anything on the internet with real estate, and ever Googled a term of rental property or anything, you will see his boss everywhere on YouTube and social media. His name is Grant Cardone, very, very famous YouTuber. All types of real estate investments he talks about, his funds. He's got millions and millions of followers. And Ryan has had a very exciting career, starting as an airline pilot and then flying for Grant Cardone, and then transitioning from a pilot into actually moving into the real estate side of the business and doing really, really big things. And he's going to tell that story today. So welcome, Ryan.
Well, thanks for having me. And I hope I can inspire one person to take, look, the aviation career and the aviation path is unique. And if you can take that and turn it into something even bigger, which I know everybody can do, that's really where the magic happens. And, even just telling briefly my story, I was 17 years old. I was working all these different odd jobs. I actually grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I realized that I wanted to use my brain. I wanted to use my hands, less of my hands, more of my brain. And when I found aviation, I was like, man, I could actually get paid to do this. And the answer was yes. I got fully committed. I went all in. At the age of 17 years old, I had my private pilot license. By the age of 21 years old, I was fully rated and ready for the regional airlines. And so at the age of 21 years old, I was the youngest. That's the ATP, or not ATP, but youngest to be hired as a first officer. I actually got the opportunity to move to St. Louis, which was a little bit terrifying at first, but that's where I really started my career. But I want to share with folks, like, my career it wasn't like I always knew I wanted to be a pilot. I didn't come from this family where everybody was an aviator. My uncle was actually a pilot. He gave it up because he got frustrated, and he actually ended up getting lost. But his dream was to become a commercial airline pilot. And so when I started flying the Cessna 175, I was like, man, this thing is cool, but I want to fly bigger jets. I want to fly more automated airplanes. And so I trained really, really hard, and all my checklists, all my part 61, 141, like all of my training was because I really wanted to be the best.
Yeah, I mean, 17, that's as young as you can get your private. That's as early as you can get it. So you're right there.
Yeah. And I always wanted, like, when I got my driving license and my permit, I was 15 and a half, like, on the day. I've always been that type of guy where I want to be, look, some people will call it an overachiever. I just want to be ready. I want to be I want to be in the right place and in the right vehicle. And that's really helped me even in my current career, because I was 21 years old. I got hired as the first officer. They actually changed the rules and the regulations. So when I was 23 years old, I actually upgraded to captain on the CRJ 700, which was the $40 million jet I flew.
Wow.
And then at the age of 24, I became a sim instructor. At the age of 25, I became a check airman. At the age of 27, I actually started working as an APD for the St. Louis FSDO. And so my whole career from 21 to 30, I ran it really hard. And I wanted to build up as much credibility in flight time, because we all know as pilots we're measured in hours.
Right.
I got all my hours. I had about 85, almost 9,000 hours. 'Cause
Wow.
I flew 850 to 1,000 hours per year. And so for folks who want to build time, the regional airlines are great for that because they will fly you until you're blue in the face.
Sure.
And so I did that. And then that next chapter in my life, when I was 30 years old, I really had to come to Jesus. And I said, I knew I was always built for something better because at the age of 25, I started buying real estate, single family homes and fourplexes and eightplexes. But I knew there was something more.
Wasn't your first real estate deal a crash pad?
Yeah. So I did. I was commuting out of Phoenix. I bought a 4-bedroom home and I rented out 3 bedrooms. Stayed in the master for free, and it was great. It was cool, but I realized that I didn't want to live with people. I didn't want to live with roommates, and that's actually what forced me into buying my first fourplex. And so by the age of 30 years old, I had this career in seniority and flowing up to United Mainline because I knew the recruiter. He was actually on one of my flights to Denver, and he's like, "Man, you are awesome," because there was issues and everything else. He says, "I want you to come see me." And I actually flew to Denver, went and saw the United recruiter because at this time, flowing up was more difficult than it is now.
Sure. Oh yeah.
So
People don't know how good they have it now.
It's a different world right now.
it's a completely different world. But I told him, I said, "Look, I'm at a fork in my life." And I always knew that I wanted something bigger and being around people who were moving and shaking. And that's at the age of 30 when I made that decision where I was going to either go and fly corporate, which was very hard to get a job at that time, flying corporate, versus it is now because there's more private aircraft in the air, or float a mainline. And I made the ultimate decision, which people thought I was batshit crazy. But I knew deep down, I was just actually telling the story at the little birthday party. I knew deep down if I got in the right position around the right people, that I would actually become one of those people as well. And we're all capable of doing it. It's just, what do you want in life?
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, that's very inspiring. So this is a great topic because one of the big questions we get, people say, should I do airlines versus corporate?
Right.
And then a lot of things, come up now. Well, since the regionals are hiring so much and you can gain so much experience, well, maybe I should go to the regionals and then transition over to corporate, which is exactly what you did. So if you could talk a little bit about, I think it's a pretty interesting story on how you focused on the Cardone operation and how you transitioned, because it was not easy, right?
Well, it wasn't easy. I actually got hired on with Grant as a sales guy because he was 2 weeks away from buying the first jet, which was the Gulfstream G200. And when I came on board, I said, look, I'm here because I want to be a part of the organization. I want to be a part of the company. And he was like, well, do you even know how to fly? Because he didn't know my background. He didn't know my history, right? Like, I was just flying every single day. And I said, Grant, look, not only do I want to fly the airplane, because, by the way, in his mind, pilots were the hardest people to hire because, they, whether they had this entitled mentality or they wanted the days off or what they wanted this work-life balance, that's something
prima donnas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't want, and I think everybody can hear it, not only my tone in my life, but also from my actions. I wanted to be all in. I wanted to be fully committed. I wanted to take care of the airplane. I wanted to make sure that everything was updated. I wanted to make sure that he was taken care of because, as a commercial versus a VIP jet, this is something that's a huge difference. Like I went from showing up at the aircraft with my flight plan already in place, with all the passengers already in place, having a maintenance crew, having all that stuff, to now running and operating everything flowing up to me. Because at the time, he didn't have an aviation department. He just had a lead.
Yeah, you built it.
Yeah. And so I walked into his office and, I got to give Elena a shout out because she's actually the first person I met. I said, Elena, there's 3 things in life that I really enjoy doing. The first one is aviation. I've always been an aviator since a young age. The second thing is real estate. My uncle was a builder in Scottsdale. So I learned about timing, like, hey, when do you pour the foundation? When do you start framing? When do you start doing the plumbing? Like all that stuff I've always been fascinated by because everything in life, in my belief, is about timing. Timing has to be down in order to fully understand something. Same thing in aviation, right? And then the third thing is I want to help a lot of people. And so she's like, well, does Grant know this? And I was like, no, but this is why I'm telling you because I know I'm going to need your help, especially around a guy like Grant. So funny story, she, they were hiring a bunch of pilots and everything else. And Elena was like, well, you understand that you have a pilot that has almost 10,000 hours in the room right next to you. And he's like, oh, yeah. But I want to get him into business. I want to get him da-da-da. And he's like, "We'll pull him in." And so my interview with Grant went like this. He said, "If I hire you to become my pilot, will you also work in the business?" And I said, "Grant, that's why I'm here." And he says, "Ryan, if I hire you to become the pilot, will you sign a 3-year commitment?" And I said, "Grant, I will sign a 5-year commitment. I'll even sign a 10-year." And he says, "Okay, write it up. Go and do a."
Wow.
Yeah, in Grant fashion, he says, "We'll write it up." And so I forget if it was a 3-year or 5-year, but I signed it instantly. No, like I already made the decision. And within 3 days, I was at flight safety in Dallas, getting type rated on the Gulfstream G200. 30 days later, I was the lead captain on the G200, and the story begins there.
Had you already left? That's crazy. Yeah, it's pretty. So had you already? Obviously, you'd already left the airlines at this point. Did you bounce around to some different corporate gigs right after the airlines, or what was how was that transition like?
No, this was my home. I knew this was my home. When you hear the truth from miles away, you know where your home is. I didn't want to be crazy. I didn't want to be anywhere else. I didn't want to. I wanted to be. I mean, I read the 10X rule. I love Grant. I love Grant. Grant to me now. I've been with Grant for 10 years. He's a mentor. He's a boss. He's a friend. He's part. It's a family here. And I just knew that he aligned with my beliefs, my ethics, my values. I wanted to find somebody who was stable. I wanted to find somebody who made decisions quickly, because I knew ultimately he was going to morph into the real estate. And I flew the Gulfstream G200. We ended up buying a Gulfstream G550. Got type rated in that. Ended up helping Grant, because in the aviation space, Grant and I are, whether we're buying helicopters or airplanes or whatever, we're always battling through that together. Had the privilege of going and picking up a brand new G650 over in Geneva, Switzerland. So like all of these really cool stories happen when you get underneath the right roof.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So you literally left. You were a check airman captain, 10,000 hours on a trajectory to United Airlines.
Yep.
And you walked away from that and actually went to an operator without an airplane yet and took an office job, a sales job, because you were so honed in on where you wanted to be. That's an incredible story, and that really, you deserve every bit of where you're at today from that, because that was a big risk, really. Wow.
Well, a lot of people, my family and my girlfriend at the time, thought it was a huge risk. I knew the risk was actually on the other side. The risk was staying put. The risk was, going down and spending the next 35 years, flying aircraft. And again, it's not a bad career. I hope that it doesn't come across where it's like I'm slamming that, because, if people are happy doing that, you should do it. But for me, I knew that I wanted to build with Grant a massive business, because you've got to remember the third thing, right? The third thing is I want to help a lot of people. And, I'm helping people by flying them safely as a mission from A to B. And I've got a lot of that under my belt. But I also wanted to help people because I knew that I wanted to invest in real estate. And I knew that I wanted to build legacy generational wealth for my family. And I just knew that this was the way to do it.
It's just crazy, the pinpoint accuracy of how you plotted all this, because we were just talking, and we even have an episode on our channel about most pilots have side hustles, because you're a high income earner with lots of time off. So a lot of people dabble in real estate, whether investing or being a realtor or a mortgage broker, or owning. I know a guy that owns a Subway restaurant or whatever. Guys are all over the place, staying busy. And you actually you made the flying job your side hustle,
right?
Almost. I mean, it's incredible.
It is. Can you talk a little bit about, because I think this is an important point that isn't touched on a lot, and Sean and I just spoke to some CFIs and I brought this up, but there's a little bit of, I guess you call it lightweight star power when you're involved in aviation. And I thought of this. A light bulb went off. This is years ago. I was watching an interview with Grant Cardone with the London Real podcast, and it was a very lengthy interview. But one of the things he said is he talked about you in that interview, and he said he would fly in to look at these properties, these big complexes, and he would bring you with them, with him on these showings. And it went, you know, these brokers would be here. These are multi-million-dollar deals, and when they started interacting with you, at first they thought, you know, you were just another backup sales guy or legal heat he was bringing with him or whatever. But when they found out that you flew the plane there, instantly you had a step of credibility, and these guys could relate to you, and it helped close deals. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, and I mean, it even goes back to when I was 17 years old. You know, when I was doing these other odd jobs, it was like, oh, you know, you're employed. But when I started telling people that I was becoming an aviator and a pilot, and I was going to become a captain, you know, the amount of respect that we all hold for, you know, like even astronauts, you know, like you have the space shuttle behind you, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. You know, it is a ton of sacrifice. It is a very heavily there's a lot of responsibility that you take on as a commander, as a pilot, as a captain, and so I think the respect is earned. You know, I think that the respect that when people see a pilot who can, you know, fly at, you know, 500 miles an hour and, you know, communicate and coordinate and, you know, do all these different things that we all do here, you know, you have to build up those bars. You know, the 4 bars are earned, and I think that rightfully so. You know, because again, and we were talking about this too, is, you know, as a pilot or as a captain, you know, either they're a pilot, you know, because, you know, when Grant was walking into these meetings, they a lot of them own their own airplanes.
Sure.
A lot of them maybe had their private pilot license. Family member is a pilot, or, you know, they have 2 pilots. And so, you know, what happens in life, and this is truly a lesson that I've learned, is a lot of this stuff is organic, but a lot of it is common reality with other people. And if you can build the reality, if you can build commonality with somebody that you're talking to, the conversation always goes a lot further. I think in life today we have too many surface level conversations, and not enough people are actually saying, "Hey, you know, how can I add value to you? Hey, what can I do?" And when that happens, you know, the surface level conversations, they only last for so long. But it's got to be, and this goes into the value add too. Like people are like, "Well, hey, how did you get around Grant Cardone? How'd you do this?" It's because I love responsibility, because I wanted to add value to the organization, not just as a pilot, but also as a real estate investor, as a real estate guy, and I wanted to know everything about the portfolio. So I really think that if people are looking for, you know, maybe it's that next career or maybe a transition, really go into it of a man of service. And it's not about going and begging somebody for, oh, can I work in the company, or hey, can I, you know, wash your cars? It's like, hey, I want to take off responsibility from you so that way I can become a better person. Life isn't about mentors teaching you. It's about mentors putting you in the right spot so you could actually learn a shit ton.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I love that. Adding value and helping people. And the whole surface level conversation, I just heard this guy, one of the podcasts I was watching, actually it was a woman. She was talking about changing your interactions with people. Don't just walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, how's it going?" She loves this question, and I love it too. She goes, "Ask them this. Hey, are you working on anything interesting here lately?" You know, and just something like that changes the whole dynamic of everything. Now that launches into a whole deal. I love it.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. And when you're around higher power people too, the one thing that people need to note is they don't have a lot of time. And so they want to just skip to the good part, you know, the whole pleasure, like, hey, the weather's great outside, or nobody really cares about that. They say, hey, how can we do more? How can we help more people? You know, how do we expand and grow? And I really think that, you know, everybody listening to this too, you know, if you really want to grow, you have to get small wins. You know, a lot of my small wins came in the aviation field. You know, getting my private pilot license, getting my instrument, getting my commercial, getting my CFI, getting my multi, getting my first type rating. You know, like my first type rating was so big for my confidence. It was almost like winning the UFC championship.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the questions I had for you, Ryan, was, you know, you have man, you've shot right to the top. Like I just was curious, and I think you've kind of just nailed it with that, with what you were just saying. You know, I was curious if you felt like you had any personal, you know, habits or tactics that you really live by that you know, that have proven to you that, okay, this is what I do that gets me this success. And obviously it was, you know, having a direct, you know, laser pointed aim of it, knowing exactly what you wanted when you left the airlines, but going into it with the idea of helping people, it sounds like, you know, and adding value.
Well, what also the thing that I did, Sean, too, is when I was 17 years old, I just said, you know, all my current friends right now, they don't want the same thing that I want. And so what I did is I've always been a person where I'm okay by myself, like studying and learning. But I think the biggest thing, and this is by far, like if somebody could take away one thing, the reason why I have been successful in my career is because I've always found great mentors. I've always found
Love it.
whether it's Captain Bell or Greg Barklage or Grant Cardone, like I know their names. Like these people have spent time on building me up because you know they have a lot of experience. And the only way to become an experienced pilot, an experienced real estate professional.
Yeah, finding mentors. That's what one of our little sayings we have in the Pro Pilot Playbook is never accept a map from somebody that hasn't been where you're wanting to go.
Yeah, yeah, because the only way to get experiences in life is to actually experience. You know,
Right.
I'll never forget. I had one of my first emergencies as a captain, and I was flying from St. Louis to Denver, and the pressurization, the valves in the back were overheating, and so the bleed air, the hot air, was coming out of one of the valves, and so it started triggering the pressurization to shut off. And I called ATC and I said, you know, hey, we need to descend 10,000 feet. You know, having pressurization issues. He's like, hold. You know, traffic is 10 o'clock, whatever, at 5,000 feet below. And I was like, no, declaring emergency. We're dropping to 10,000 feet. Move the traffic. Like we got to figure something out here because I didn't want the mass to drop. And it was intense. And I learned a lot from that because the biggest thing I learned was, you know, when we got down to 10,000 feet, we went back to St. Louis, we did our thing, but I called my chief pilot and I said, you know, look, we had this emergency, you know, we didn't complete the mission, you know, here's what's going on. And he says, Ryan, write it up, go through the proper processes and procedures. But he told me, he says, you know what makes experienced pilots? And I said, no, what makes experienced pilots? He says, experiences. He says, great job. He says, you got the airplane back safely. He says, you didn't have any further emergencies, and continue on. And to me, that, you know, like that's one of the stories that happened 16 years ago. And I still remember it to this day because life is about getting in the game and getting experiences. So that way you become a better, stronger, faster person in anything you're doing.
Right.
That is great advice. Great advice. So talk about, so here you are, you're deep within the Cardone operation. You're running his flight department. You handled several aircraft acquisitions for him. You're flying his plane. You're also traveling and analyzing these real estate deals with him. You were on his Monday show, real estate show that I used to watch. So how did that tie into what you're doing now and transitioning to now VP at Cardone Capital?
Well, look, it's very simple. You know, when I got the position, you know, my vision was, okay, I want to be Grant's right-hand person for the real estate. And he had always been looking for another person to be, you know, hey, knows every property, knows all the managers, knows all the people, knows the income, the expenses, you know, the NOI, net operating income. And I got the opportunity actually over Christmas dinner. And so it was like 6 months into my role. And I went over for Christmas dinner and he came home and he was pissed off. And he's like, man, you know, I got 344 units in Daphne, Alabama. The pool's dirty. This is this. And, you know, they got some units they need to rent. And I looked at him. I said, well, hey, what if I parked the airplane in Miami and I came back up here and I helped you with the real estate deal? And he's like, he looked at me and he's like, you would do that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so what happened was that started my career out with him in, you know, the real estate division. And so I was calling him every day and saying, hey, what would you do on this? What would you do on this? And he looked at me, he's like, man, Ryan, you really like this, don't you? And I'm like, Grant, this is what I've been telling you. And I was there on that property because the goal was to go up there and lease units. I was on that site. I was 30 years old. I was on that site the goal was 30 days, get 30 leases, fill the thing up to 99%. I was there for 15 days. I got 15 leases. I was banging on doors, identified that the property manager wasn't great. She was posting on Facebook to get leads. They had 4 likes. We know that's not a recipe for success. And I also was able to identify that the assistant manager was great and the assistant maintenance guy was great. And so we actually ended up promoting them and we got that property turned around. And so from there,
Wow.
he said, get your ass back here. You're no longer a sales guy, but you're going to be on the real estate team with me. And at the time, there was a real estate team of 1. It was Grant and another guy. And he actually ended up firing that guy on my way back to Miami. And so now it was just Grant and I. We had about, I don't know, it was like 4,000 units. And we operated like a family office where, we would manage the apartments, manage the third parties, really just buying real estate for Grant and his family. And that's where things changed, where he knew I wanted to do this. I was traveling the world with him, meeting a lot of his business partners, meeting a lot of business folks who wanted to invest with Grant. And that's actually how we ended up starting the first deal and the first fund, where we ended up raising $6 million in 6 days. And,
Wow.
now we're on fund, I think it's like 27. We've raised almost $2 billion. And we're really serving a lot of people when it comes to them earning their money, placing it in great quality real estate. And we've been able to build out a huge platform where now we're up to almost 15,000 units. And I'm very proud. I'm very proud of it.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow.
So
That's
something I've been wanting to ask you for a while, Ryan, is are you still staying current in the airplane? Do you just so you can jump up there every now and then and take a trip and get it out of your system, or you just kind of let it go because it's just, I mean, your world now is just whatever.
Well,
I'm just curious.
I'm not current in the 650 because I didn't go get the type rating because I didn't have 4 weeks to go and do it.
Gotcha.
I do believe though, like if I had to go up there and jump up, I mean the 550 and the 650,
Sure.
very 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 similar aircraft.
Right.
I do stay current in GA. I've got friends who own the Cirrus and Pilatus and different single engines, so I still stay current. But look, I'm in the right spot, and I still fly on the airplane. I still enjoy aviation. It's just evolved into something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal and my focus to always to be an owner operator, where eventually I'll be able to get my own airplane and have that to travel. And so I'll always be a pilot. I'll always stay current, but the time commitment, and this is for everybody, whether you're a private pilot or you're a commercial airline pilot. I have so much respect for the pilots because it takes so much time, energy, and effort to do it the right way. And in aviation, you have to do it the right way. And so for me, if I'm working, 60, 70, 80 hours in the real estate each week, well, then I'm not fully in it. And so I leave it for the pros in the 650 to act and operate.
Gotcha.
Man, that's great. So what do you think, Sean? I got a question for you. What do you think the chances are of Captain Ryan here achieving his goals and maybe owning an airplane someday?
Oh, I don't
I'd
see
put
any.
a lot of money on that.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that just reminded me of something else I wanted to ask you. So our mutual friend here, who's a member of our coaching program to become a professional pilot as fast and cheap as possible. He had shared some photos. I think you had shared with him about at Sun and Fun. Maybe you were. Did you get type rated in some little military jet or something like that? What was that all about? I thought maybe it was one of those. It was actually some kind of Navy aircraft. It looked like an A6 or something, maybe, or I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that's an S211, and I haven't got type rated on that yet, but I probably will. Those are actually real estate guys who were in the military. I think they were in the Navy or Air Force, and these guys have a bunch of time and they're just so skilled. And what they do is they rent out the airplane for an hour or 2 hours, and they'll help you get type rated. Haven't got my type rating
Yeah.
yet. I think I've got 3 hours or 4 hours in the S211. Great aircraft. It's a lot of fun. Upside down, inside out. Some of the G's that they pull are incredible. But
Right.
those are really where my passions have shifted to, right? Where it's like, I went through the airlines, I went through corporate. Now it's about giving back, having fun, experience aviation in a whole different light, but also inspiring
Right.
other people to get in this game, because this is one of the best games in the world. I mean, to be able to fly airplanes, 40, 50, $60 million jets, travel and see the world, because you meet so many people, right? And I really think that's been a huge backbone to my success, is that I've met a lot of people, I've dealt with a lot of people, I've communicated with a lot of people, and all of those skills I'm here to tell you are transferable. So, like, even in the military, people are like, oh, well, are these skills transferable into business? Hell yes. Are being a captain and being a check airman, are they transferable into becoming a business owner? Absolutely. And that's why, where you were saying, Sean, the side hustles, I like the side hustles. I had one when I was in the real estate, buying 4 units in homes when I was in the airlines. At a certain point in time, you got to take that side hustle into being something so big where you could actually create financial freedom.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about it. Yeah. If you're not, that's what I'm doing with any side hustle I got going on. If it's not growing, it's dying. I'm getting rid of it. I'm moving on to the next venture. But that little jet, though, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I've reached a point in my flying that I'm looking for the next thing. I got a buddy I used to fly with at the airlines. He's a DPE and balloons down in Louisville. So I was looking at getting all my balloon licenses, my glider stuff. That L-39, it's a comparable jet to what you were flying. There's a guy over in North Carolina. He's got 2 of them, and you can go over there for 4 days and rip and turn. And it's just awesome to be able to fly an airplane that'll break me before I break it. And, he'll get you type rated in the L-39. You can pick them things up for $600,000-$700,000 grand. And that would be pretty cool to own a little fighter jet.
Yeah, I think so too, because, a couple pieces, I look at the game a little different now as far as, marketing and promotion and also different events around those types of airplanes. But they're sexy, they're cool, they're fun. I think every kid's dream is to become a fighter pilot.
Sure.
And there's different ways to do it. You can either go and time, energy, and effort in the Air Force or wherever the service piece is, or you can buy it. And you can fly with these guys. I mean, just the fact of flying with these guys who have, hundreds, probably thousands of hours in the F-18. I know, it's like corporate. You don't fly as much, but the amount you do fly is more impactful. Right. So even at 500 or 1,000 hours, I mean, these guys have been upside down for, half the time. It's just really inspiring, and I think for me and for you and for everybody also listening, it's all about growth. Everything in aviation, there's a transferable skill. So whether you're flying for the airlines or flying the G200 or for a corporate department, everything's transferable into business. And so I highly encourage people who are trying to find something inside themselves, like, you have to just go and do it. I see a lot of people overthinking it, right? Oh, should I go do this? Should I go do this? Part 161, part 141. Don't worry about all that stuff.
Right.
Just go and get it. Go and get all of the. There's a couple things in life that people can't take away from us. One is ratings, unless you do something really bad. But it's the experience. The experience in life. Nobody could ever take that away from you. And I think that's what we're all seeking. We're all seeking experiences. And I thrive off of experiences. I love experiences because that makes you a better damn person.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is, if you want something you've never had, you got to go do something you've never done.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
And, that whole thing of doing this other stuff in aviation, like I was mentioning, getting the balloon certificate and all this stuff. It's so true. One of the kids in our coaching call, he's a CFI, so he's got a few hundred hours. I think he's got like 700 some hours. He just went and did some aerobatic lessons, which I have done before too. And when I was a CFI, and it just opens up this whole new world of aviation, like you didn't even know was there, and in the capabilities of the aircraft. You've been putzing around in for hundreds of hours. Now you're doing this stuff with it. It opens up a whole new world. And
Well,
exactly.
And Sean, what people need to realize too is that in aviation, it should actually get easier. When you first start flying, there's a lot of buttons, and some of the aircraft are older. You know, I learned on a 6-pack, you know, a Cessna 175.
Sure.
My first couple solos were between the 175 and the 152. When you're flying that compared to a $40 million jet, it actually becomes easier because you have more automation, you've got better autopilots, you've got crew. All of this stuff actually becomes even more exciting, and also a better quality of life. You know, but you have to sacrifice, you know, going through and getting the ratings, going through and sweating. I got all my licenses in Scottsdale, Arizona. Actually, I got my private at Falcon Field, but we were sweating.
Yeah.
104,
That's the sweat.
Yeah.
But it was all worth it.
That's great you bring that up, Ryan, because one of the things I say to some of the students that we're mentoring, you know, they're talking about they're working on their solar, their instrument rating or whatever. And, you know, I say to them, are you having fun doing what you're doing? They say, oh, it's a blast. It's way better than a lot of these are second career people. It's way better than my old job. And what I say to them is exactly what you said. I said, well, if you're enjoying it now, what you're doing is actually the worst part of your entire aviation career. And if you enjoy it now, wait, it's only going to get better from here, you know?
Yeah, because people sometimes it's hard for them to see past that bad landing, or, you know, learning the crosswinds or learning the navigations, or learning, you know, when we were training, we were learning a lot about ground-based navigation facilities. You know, in the airlines, you rarely ever use that. You were shooting ILS approaches, you were shooting GPS, you know, the RNAV capabilities, you know, even this thing with Elon Musk, you know, creating satellites and, you know, creating even more automation. I think it's going to get even more advanced. So I'm super optimistic about the aviation and in the space and in this community, but we need more pilots. You know, we were talking about this in early 2000s. There will be a pilot shortage. Is now the right time? Yes. Go out there, get your license. Especially, you know, I always say, you know, aviation's a passion job. It is a passion job, but it is still a job. But you have to create that passion. You really have to keep the love for it. And if you can do that, you'll be very successful.
That's wonderful advice.
Well said.
Yeah. And so just to wrap this up, and this is one of my favorite interviews ever, so I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
So
really cool.
Our core viewer is typically somebody that's doing a job they really don't like. They always are dreaming and looking at the sky. Most of them watch, you know, all of our videos. We're about to do episode 100 here soon, so they've gone through all our content, and they just need that little step to kind of jump in and take that risk and go forward. So if you were speaking directly, this is a guy, just to recap, Ryan, you've been the pinnacle of all aviation. You've made it into business. Your social media, some of the celebrities I'm seeing on your social media that you're having photo ops with, incredible. So you're a role model for a lot of people. What would you tell that person, he or she, that's dreaming about becoming a pilot and they're kind of nervous on making that first step?
I would just say they're not as far as they think they are. You know, they're not. It's not going to take as long as you think it's going to take. You know, when you start getting really ramped up, it's a snowball effect. You know, all this stuff happens for people who believe in themselves. You got to believe in yourself, though. And if you believe in yourself, you will find the right people that will also believe in you. Actually, probably more than you believe in yourself, but they'll get you there. The number one thing that I learned at 21 years old is it wasn't about skill, it was about attitude. And if you have the right attitude, you will get the skill. But the thing we're lacking right now is people with great attitudes. And so if you could just learn that, if you could just be open and just know you know nothing. Because even right now, I am still asking some of the basic questions in business and in aviation because I want to grow. You know, there's old pilots and there's bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots.
Yep.
So just keeping an open mind is saying, hey, I don't know this. Maybe I am switching careers. I flew with a lot of guys who one of the best decisions that they ever made was they left their 9 to 5 and they started flying, because if you can figure out a way, and this was always my vision and ideal scene, if you can find a way to never work a day in your life, you've succeeded.
Right.
Wonderful.
That is great advice. And the attitude thing, Ryan, that has been a theme in my life and the great thing about attitude is you may not be able to control whether you were in a car accident on the way to work.
Yep.
You may not be able to control the weather you can't control the weather that day. But the one thing you are absolutely, certainly in control of every day is your attitude. And man, that is such a great message.
Well, and Sean too, to add to that, because I think people like stories. I was in Chicago O'Hare one day, and we got hit with one of the biggest snowstorms. And I just upgraded. It's
in Chicago. That's weird.
Yeah. Well, and it's terrifying, right? And of all people, because look, you learn something from everybody. That's the cool message that we're saying right now.
Sure.
That, I walked up to the airplane, and one of the flight attendants, she had experience. She was an older lady and just very wise. And she told me, she says, you know what, Ryan, the best thing about today is nothing is ever the same in 24 hours. So if you go to the airport and you're dealing with a snowstorm, guess what? In 24 hours, it ain't going to be the same. If you're dealing with a maintenance issue, guess what? In 24 hours, it's not going to be the same because everything changes in 24 hours. Yeah, maybe you got kicked down today, but tomorrow is going to be a new day with blue skies, with fluffy clouds. I mean, this is like, if people can't feel the energy and excitement, like I have experienced some of the most best experiences of my life have come in aviation. I hang out with Grant Cardone every single day.
Yeah.
It's a great experience. But there's something about aviation that just is in your blood. And I would just hate for people to count that out because they see this challenge of, oh, I got to read these books, or I got to get my private, I got to get my instrument. Instrument was one of my funnest ratings that I did. It was so much fun. And I just think that people get a little bit overwhelmed. But that's why you got to find the right mentor, because the mentors will actually make this career so easy. Because if you read the book, you got to touch the airplane. If you touch the airplane, you got to know what it does. And if you can get both of those two things combined where you have the book smarts, and by the way, I'm not a great student, but when I hooked into aviation, I became a phenomenal student because I got reality with the thing that I wanted the most. And I wanted to be the captain. I wanted to be the guy who learned from other captains. We hear this all the time. In order to become a great leader, you have to be a great follower. And so what I did when I was flying in my career is I was always asking the captains questions, and I was always taking what I liked and what I didn't like, so it would mold me to be into what I perceived as a likable but professional leader and captain.
Wonderful.
Good. Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, to sound like a wise old lady you had there as a flight attendant there on your plane that day.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot from older, wiser, more mature people in my life. Most of my friends are older. I feel like I'm an old spirit, and I think if you can go to a retirement home and learn from those people, I think you're going to learn a hell of a lot more than somebody who is at or below where you are, and also where you want to be.
Yeah, I agree. I love these shows where they go in those retirement homes and they're interviewing these old war vets and stuff, and they're telling some of these stories. And like, oh my gosh, it looks like so much fun. I want to go do this. I want to go talk to these folks.
Incredible. Well, Ryan, thanks again. I mean, your career has been incredible. The things that you've accomplished in your early 40s now is just unbelievable. I know you got great things to come. I heard you're getting married soon, and congratulations. You're really just getting started on your career. We'd love to have you on again sometime and see what adventure you're up to, in a few years. That'd be wonderful.
Well, I agree with you, Mike. I know I'm just getting started, and there's a lot more good, stuff to come. I'm very excited about this next chapter, where just got engaged to Renata, did it in Aspen on top of Ajax. Actually, nice. Incredible. We actually had, when we go back and look at the photo, there was actually an eagle in the background of the proposal. And I told my entire family, because, my mother's a little bit gullible. She found out quick. But I told her that I hired an eagle to come in and get in the photo shoot with Renata and I. So no, I'm excited to start a family. I think going back to that next legacy and generation, I'm really excited for kids. And I think that when you're 40 years old and beyond, I actually believe that that's the prime. When you're 20, you're seeking and you're trying to find what you want to do. In your 30s, you're trying to figure out who you are and what you want to do. And in your 40s, you know who you are. And so I know more and more and more who I am, but I'm seeking, hey, what is next? Like, how do we go from Cardone Capital 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0? How do we create a public vehicle? How do we, fly more? How do we do, so I just, again, for all the folks listening, you got to put in the time.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put in the time, because if you put in the time now when you're young, you will really reap a hell of a lot more, and you will get around people and you will get around opportunities to really thrive and create that life that you want. Everything can get better.
I've always said something similar, Ryan. I've always thought that a man should be an expert at something by the time you're 35 years old. You should be at the top of your field, a true expert in that, whatever it is. And then you just, set it all on fire, burn it down and tear it up. And, in your 40s, exactly. I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm 48 and I'm whatever. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, look, a lot of people change careers. A lot of people, they're 30 and 35 and 40. I always heard the thing, I just feel like I'm starting too late. Well, it's better to start now than never.
Right.
And I was blessed. My uncle bought an airplane when I was 17 years old, and I took advantage of the opportunity. But the opportunity is still present today. And I've seen so many people, like when you look at life and you're 35 years old or you're 30 years old or you're 40, you're just getting started. So go and do what you want and what you actually enjoy for the next 30, 40, 50 years, because life is actually a lot longer than we all think. Everybody says life is short. Life is actually long if you're doing something you don't enjoy. And by the way, I've never, just to set the record clear, I have never worked a day in my life.
Love it.
Yep.
People have to say, man, do you have this? Do you have this? Guys, I've never, I've flown airplanes, and my partner's Grant Cardone. I would have worked for Grant for free, and you can tell him that.
Yeah.
Because what you are able to learn around people who have already been there, already done that, that's the shortcut in life. The shortcut in life is hanging out with you. If I want to become a pilot, I'm hanging out with Sean and Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said about the mentors. That's perfect for where we're at right now.
It's just a no-brainer. Everybody's trying to find the shortcut, but they're trying to find it in a book. No. You have to get around the people who are already doing what you want. If you get around people who are doing what you want, guess what? You become that person and beyond.
Right.
Yeah. They always say you're the combination of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right?
And I would honestly say, Mike, it's probably the 1 or 2 people. I hang out with Renata and Grant, and I've got a team of 30 now. But a lot of my closest friends have become the advisors, like the attorneys, like the managers, like a lot of my business now is dealing with big relationships with, whether it's lenders and banks, whether it's attorneys or deal guys, whether it's brokers, because all those people become your friend because you're doing deals together. So it's just amazing. It's just really amazing what evolves out of something that some people consider, whether it's a change or aviation or whatever. I truly believe that aviation has put me in the place where I am today because I was able to transfer all of those skills into what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. What you were saying there about how this leads to that and whatever, that's what Mike and I's big thing is, taking action. And, these people sitting around reading the books and not what, just get in the car and drive to the airport. You don't know what that's going to, you are in complete control of that aspect of it, taking action. Get in the car, drive to the airport, and magic happens.
Yeah. Not doing something is doing something,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, great, Ryan. I can't thank you enough for your time today. So many great tidbits of advice that you dropped in there. We'll be sure we even split this into some short videos that I'm sure people will really enjoy. But Thanks again for being on the podcast. If anybody has any questions, maybe we'll do an interview with Ryan again. You can drop them in the comments below, and email us if you have a great idea at podcast@propilotplaybook.com. And until we meet again.
Yep. We'll see you guys next week.